Samantha Prescott smoothed a stray strand of chestnut hair. 28 third-grade students at Washington Elementary School in Flint were concentrating on their math assignments. After the last student left the classroom, Samantha gathered the tests into a folder and began preparing for the next day. The school gradually quieted down, sinking into the silence after school. "Planning to stay late again?" a familiar voice called from the doorway. Samantha looked up and saw her best friend, Rachel Clark. They had met 3 years ago when Rachel, who worked as a social worker, was running a program at the school to prevent domestic violence. "Just half an hour. I need to prepare materials for tomorrow's project," Samantha replied, getting up from the table. "What are you doing here?" "I was finishing a meeting with Tommy Baker's parents. I decided to stop by and see you, remembering your habit of staying late. Thought we could grab a coffee?" Samantha glanced at her watch and nodded. When they left the school, the sky was already tinged with the muted colors of dusk. A cool breeze reminded them that autumn was steadily taking hold. Samantha wrapped her light beige cardigan more tightly around herself. When they turned onto Oak Street, Samantha involuntarily slowed her pace. At the corner of the pharmacy, she noticed a familiar figure. A man in a worn jacket and an unkempt beard sat on a bench with his head down. Even from a distance, she would have recognized him from 1,000 others. Daniel. Memories flooded back. 8 years ago, they had been a happy couple. Daniel Prescott, a talented engineer at Flint Motors, and she, a young teacher. They had met at a charity event for the children of factory workers. The spark between them was instant, and 6 months later, they were married. The first 3 years were almost perfect. A cozy house on Riverside Avenue, plans to have children, weekends together at Lake Michigan, and then the factory started laying off staff. Daniel held out for a long time, surviving 3 waves of layoffs. But the 4th wave hit him too. He said he would find a new job quickly, that he had offers. But weeks went by, and the phone remained silent. Samantha didn't notice how her evening beer to relax had turned into a morning necessity. "Sam?" Rachel's voice snapped her out of her stupor. "Did something happen? Is it him?" she asked quietly. "You said you hadn't seen him in over a year." "I hadn't," Samantha replied tensely. "I don't know what he's doing in this area." The cafe was not very crowded. They took a table by the window, and Samantha sat so she could see the street. She couldn't shake the feeling of unease. "Sam, if he starts showing up around you again, maybe you should go to the police." Rachel wrapped both hands around her coffee cup. "What am I going to tell them? My ex-husband was sitting on a bench in a public place?" Samantha shook her head. "They don't have the resources for that, you know." Rachel pursed her lips. "Listen, I work with troubled families every day. Don't wait until the situation becomes critical." Samantha looked away. She hadn't told Rachel everything. About how Daniel had raised his hand to her for the first time after 6 months of unemployment. About how she had explained the bruises to her colleagues as clumsiness. About the growing debts he had hidden until the collectors came. About the house being mortgaged, which she only found out about when she received the eviction notice. "I'll think about it," Samantha finally said. Rachel, sensing her reluctance, changed the subject. "By the way, have you heard about the new restaurant on Maple Avenue? Lorenzo's, Italian cuisine. Everyone's raving about it." "I've driven by, but I haven't been there. The chef and owner recently moved from Chicago. They say his pasta is incredible." Rachel smiled slyly. "And by the way, he's not married." "Rachel!" Samantha couldn't help but laugh. "You're hopeless." "What? I'm just sharing information," her friend shrugged innocently. "Maybe we should go there on Friday night?" Samantha wanted to refuse, but caught herself thinking that she really needed to relax. "Okay, let's give it a try." Friday evening came faster than Samantha expected. She put on a dark blue dress that she hadn't taken out of the closet for over a year, and lightly tinted her eyelashes. The reflection in the mirror looked almost unfamiliar. A woman with bright green eyes, ready to go out on the town. The Lorenzo restaurant was located in a renovated former textile factory. High ceilings with exposed beams, brick walls, and soft lighting created an atmosphere of comfort and elegance at the same time. "A table for two under the name Clark," Rachel said to the hostess, a slender girl with perfectly styled hair. "Of course, follow me," she smiled, picking up two menus. They were shown to a table by a panoramic window overlooking the Flint River, glistening in the evening lights. Samantha couldn't help but admire the view. "Do you like it?" came a deep male voice with a slight accent. She turned and saw a tall man with expressive features and warm brown eyes. He was wearing a white shirt with rolled-up sleeves and a black chef's apron. "Very much," Samantha replied with a slight smile. "Michael Lorenzo," he introduced himself, extending his hand. "Welcome to my restaurant." "Samantha Prescott," she shook his hand, feeling unexpectedly excited. "And I'm Rachel Clark," her friend interjected with a broad smile. "I've heard a lot about your cuisine." "I hope to live up to expectations," Michael smiled. "Allow me to recommend our signature dish, pappardelle with white mushrooms and truffle oil." "Sounds delicious," Samantha nodded. "Then I will personally oversee its preparation," Michael said, keeping his eyes on her. "Have a pleasant evening, ladies." When he left, Rachel leaned forward. "Did you see the way he looked at you?" "Don't be silly," Samantha dismissed, although she felt her cheeks flush slightly. "He was devouring you with his eyes," her friend insisted. "I bet he'll be back soon." Sure enough, Michael personally brought them their order and a bottle of fine Italian wine. "On the house," he explained as he poured the ruby-colored liquid into glasses. "For special guests." His gaze lingered on Samantha a little longer than necessary. Dinner exceeded all expectations. Samantha couldn't remember the last time she had eaten something so delicious. The conversation with Rachel flowed easily and naturally, as if washing away all the worries of the past few days. When they were about to leave, Michael approached their table again. "I hope you enjoyed your meal?" "It was wonderful," Samantha replied sincerely. "I'd love to see you again," he said, taking out his business card. "Here's my personal number if you want to make a reservation or just talk." Samantha took the card, feeling Rachel's attentive gaze on her. "Thank you," she said quietly. Leaving the restaurant, they walked slowly down the evening street. "I told you so," Rachel declared triumphantly. "He definitely liked you." "Stop it," Samantha said, embarrassed but unable to hide her smile. Suddenly, her phone vibrated. Samantha took it out of her purse and froze when she saw the number. It was unfamiliar, but she recognized the combination of digits that she once knew by heart. But a feeling of unease grew inside her. Too many coincidences in 1 week. First, Daniel showed up at school, now a call from his number. At home, after locking the door twice, Samantha went to the window. The street was deserted, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Her phone vibrated again. A message from the same number. "We need to talk, Sammy." No one but Daniel called her that. Samantha turned off her phone and drew the curtains tightly. Tomorrow she would think about what to do. Today, she just needed to get through the night. In the darkness around the corner from Samantha's house, a male figure stood motionless under a tree, watching the light in her window. When it went out, the man stood still for a while longer, then slowly wandered away, disappearing into the night shadows of Flint. Samantha woke up to the sound of rain drumming on the roof. The clock on the bedside table showed 6 in the morning, 30 minutes earlier than usual. She had had a restless night, filled with disturbing dreams in which she tried again and again to hide from someone who was chasing her. When she turned on her phone, she saw 3 missed calls from an unknown number and another message. "I need money, Sammy. I know you have it." Samantha's hands trembled. She remembered how 2 years ago, after her divorce, she had put all her savings into a down payment on a small apartment and paid off some of Daniel's debts to protect her credit history. Now she was left with only her modest teacher's salary, most of which went toward her monthly mortgage payments. As she got ready for work, she glanced out the window several times. The street was empty, but she couldn't shake her uneasiness. Samantha decided to take a taxi to school instead of walking as usual. The day passed in tension. Twice, she thought she saw a familiar figure through the classroom window. By the end of the school day, Samantha had a headache. Rachel's face darkened. "This is stalking, Sam. You need to go to the police." "And what will they do? They have no proof that it's him." "At least they'll have a record of your report," Rachel insisted. "If the situation gets worse, you'll already have a documented history." It was difficult to argue with her friend's logic. After work, they went together to the police station on Pine Street. The officer on duty, a middle-aged man with a tired look, listened to Samantha's story without much interest. "Mrs. Prescott, if your ex-husband has not made any direct threats or violated public order, there is little we can do," he said, filling out a standard complaint form. "There are no threats of violence in the messages, only a request for money." "He's following me," Samantha objected. "He shows up at my work and calls me from different numbers. We can record your concerns, but it's not enough for a restraining order," the officer said, handing her a copy of the completed form. "I advise you to save all messages and document every instance of harassment. If the situation worsens, contact us again." Leaving the station, Samantha felt disappointed. "I told you it was useless." "At least now there's an official record." Rachel hugged her friend around the shoulders. "Listen, I work with a rehabilitation program for the homeless. Maybe we should try to help Daniel. If he gets back on his feet, he might stop harassing you." "Do you really think he'll agree?" Samantha asked skeptically. "I don't know, but it's worth a try." "You said he was a different person before he lost his job." Samantha nodded silently. She remembered Daniel before the alcohol and the debts, a smart, caring man with plans for the future. That was the Daniel she had fallen in love with. But the man who was now stalking her was only a distorted shadow of his former self. When she got home that evening, Samantha found a small box on her doorstep. Inside was a dried rose, just like the ones Daniel had given her at the beginning of their relationship. Attached to the flower was a note. "Remember how good it was. I only need $500. With trembling hands, Samantha closed the box and threw it in the trash. After a moment's hesitation, she took out Michael Lorenzo's business card. Samantha hadn't planned on calling him so soon, but now she desperately wanted to hear his friendly voice. "Lorenzo's restaurant," answered a deep voice with an Italian accent. "Michael, this is Samantha Prescott. We met on Friday night." "Samantha," he said with a smile in his voice. "It's good to hear from you." "I'm calling to see," she hesitated, not knowing how to phrase it. "If you have a table available tonight?" "There's always room for you," Michael replied. "Would 8 o'clock work for you?" "Perfect." Samantha felt the tension ease a little. "Thank you." The restaurant was crowded, but a table in a cozy corner awaited her, just as Michael had promised. He personally greeted her at the entrance. "You look beautiful," he said, helping her take off her coat. Over dinner, Michael told her about his move from Chicago to Flint. "Many people thought I was crazy. To leave a successful business in a big city and move here, to a city that was going through tough times. But I always believed in the revival of places like this. And besides, real estate is much more affordable here." He smiled. "What brought you to the world of education?" "I've always loved working with children," Samantha replied, enjoying the ease of the conversation. "Seeing them grow, learn, and discover the world is a special feeling." The evening flew by. For the first time in a long time, Samantha laughed sincerely, forgetting her worries. "Let me walk you home," Michael offered when they finished dessert. "No, your restaurant is full of customers," Samantha objected. "My assistants will be fine," he took her hand. "I insist." They walked through Flint in the evening, talking about books, movies, and places they would like to visit. Samantha didn't notice when they reached her house. "Thank you for a wonderful evening," she said, stopping at the entrance. "I hope we can do it again." Michael looked into her eyes. "Maybe this weekend? I could cook dinner at your place." "Sounds wonderful," Samantha smiled. "Saturday night?" Michael nodded and leaned over to kiss her lightly on the cheek. I'll look forward to it. Samantha climbed the stairs with a light heart, which immediately grew heavy when she saw Daniel sitting on the steps in front of her apartment. Hi, Sammy, he said hoarsely, getting up. I see you're having a good time. He looked even worse than when she had last seen him, his face gaunt, his eyes red, 3 days stubble. He smelled of cheap alcohol and unwashed clothes. What are you doing here, Daniel? Samantha tried to sound firm, even though her heart was pounding like crazy. I came to talk to you nicely. He took a step toward her. I need money, Sam. Just $500. I know you have it. I don't have that kind of money, Daniel. She shook her head. And even if I did, it wouldn't solve anything. You need help, not money. Don't lecture me. His voice rose. I lost everything because of you. You ran away when things got tough. I didn't run away, Samantha replied quietly. I tried to help you for over a year. You refused treatment. You refused to work. You raised your hand to me, Daniel. He swayed, leaning against the wall. It was just once, and I didn't mean to. His voice trembled. I really need the money, Sam. I'm in trouble. For a moment, Samantha saw the old Daniel in his eyes, confused, lost. But she had been through this before. I can help you in another way, she said. My friend Rachel works with a rehabilitation program. They can provide you with housing, help with treatment, find a job. I don't need charity, he snapped. I need money. Now. Leave, Daniel, Samantha said firmly, reaching for her phone. Or I'll call the police. He looked at her with a long gaze that mixed anger and despair. You'll regret this, Sammy. Trust me. Daniel slowly descended the stairs. Samantha opened the door with trembling hands and double-locked it. The next morning, Rachel met her at the school entrance. Samantha told her about Daniel's visit yesterday. This is serious, Sam. Rachel frowned. No, I'm not going to hide in my own town, Samantha replied firmly. But I mentioned your program to him. He refused, of course. I'll try to find him, Rachel said. After school, Samantha was surprised to find Michael waiting for her at the school gate. I decided to surprise you, he smiled, handing her a small bouquet of wildflowers. And to find out if you've changed your mind about Saturday dinner. I haven't changed my mind, Samantha said, accepting the flowers and feeling her heart warm. Thank you. That's so sweet. They didn't notice Daniel watching them from his car across the street, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles were white. That same evening, Rachel called Samantha. I found him, she said excitedly. He agreed to talk to me. What? How did you do that? He's staying in an abandoned building on Greenwood Avenue. Our outreach workers knew about him. I told him you were worried and offered to help. And he agreed? Samantha asked incredulously. To talk, yes. We're meeting tomorrow at the Social Support Center. I can't promise miracles, but it's a start. Samantha was silent, trying to process the news. Thanks, Rachel, but be careful with him. He's changed. I work with people in crisis situations every day, her friend reassured her. Everything will be fine. When Rachel met Daniel at the Social Support Center the next day, she was struck by the contrast between his current appearance and the photos Samantha had once shown her. The once fit, confident man had become an emaciated shadow of his former self. They talked for almost an hour. Rachel told him about the rehabilitation program, 30 days at the support center, treatment for alcohol addiction, help finding a job. Think about it, she said, handing him a brochure. It's a chance to start over. Daniel thoughtfully turned the brochure over in his hands. What if I agree and Samantha comes back to me? Rachel looked him straight in the eye. You have to do this for yourself, not for her. He stood up, crumpling the brochure. When he left, Rachel immediately called Samantha. I'm worried about you. He's not himself. What should I do? It's better to leave town for the weekend, or at least not stay alone, Rachel said. You have a date with Michael on Saturday, right? Maybe you could move it to his place? Samantha agreed. Canceling her plans seemed like a sign of weakness, an admission of Daniel's power over her life, and she had sworn to herself that she would never give him that power again. On Friday evening, she found her car's windshield scratched and a note under the windshield wiper. "I hope your new friend is rich. I need 1,000 now." Saturday evening at Michael Lorenzo's apartment was filled with the aromas of fresh baking and Italian herbs. Samantha watched Michael skillfully chop vegetables for the sauce while telling a funny story from his childhood in Sicily. Samantha sat at the kitchen counter with a glass of red wine, feeling strangely calm despite the events of the past few days. "What about your family?" Michael asked, without looking up from the sauce. "Do they live here in Flint?" "No," Samantha shook her head. "My parents moved to Florida after they retired. We see each other a couple of times a year." She didn't mention that the rare visits were partly due to their disapproval of her marriage to Daniel. They had warned her that he wasn't who he claimed to be, but Samantha, blinded by love, hadn't listened. Dinner was warm and pleasant. After dessert, they moved to the living room, where Michael showed her his jazz record collection. "You seem tense," he remarked, as they sat on the sofa listening to Miles Davis. "Is something wrong?" Samantha hesitated. She didn't want to involve Michael in her problems, but something in his attentive gaze encouraged her to be honest. "I'm in a difficult situation with my ex-husband," she finally admitted. "He's harassing me, demanding money." Michael frowned. "Have you gone to the police?" "Yes, but they can't do anything without direct threats." He took her hands in his. "I can help. I have friends in the police, or," he hesitated, "I can talk to him myself." "No." Samantha shook her head sharply. "That will only make the situation worse. Daniel wasn't always like this. Losing his job and alcoholism changed him." "I understand," Michael nodded, although his face showed concern. "But know that you're not alone in this." When Samantha was about to leave, Michael offered to let her stay the night, but she declined. Their relationship was just beginning, and she didn't want to rush things. Michael insisted on walking her home and checking the apartment. "Everything's fine," he said, after looking through all the rooms. "But I'd feel better if you changed the locks." "I'll think about it," Samantha promised. Michael kissed her, a real tender kiss that made Samantha's head spin. "Call me when you wake up," he said goodbye. Sunday morning began with an unpleasant surprise. Samantha found an unstamped envelope on her doorstep. Someone had clearly delivered it in person. Inside was a photograph taken through her kitchen window while she was making breakfast the night before, and a note. "Life is beautiful, Sammy. Now I need 1,500, or I'll tell your new boyfriend what happened in Detroit." Samantha turned pale. Detroit. She had almost forgotten about it. With trembling fingers, she dialed Rachel's number. "He knows where I live. He's watching me." Samantha's voice trembled. "And now he's threatening to tell Michael about Detroit." "What?" Rachel asked. "What happened in Detroit?" Samantha took a deep breath. "Remember when I said Daniel only hit me once? That's not entirely true. There was another time, in Detroit, at his colleague's wedding. He got drunk and started getting jealous of me and the groom's best man. We had a fight at the hotel, and he pushed me so hard that I hit my head on the edge of the table. There was blood. I needed stitches." Her voice trembled. "I told the doctors I had fallen. God, Sam, why didn't you ever tell me?" "I was ashamed," Samantha replied quietly. "He cried, begged for forgiveness, promised to get treatment. I believed him." Rachel was silent for a few seconds. "Listen, this isn't just harassment, it's blackmail. You need to go back to the police." "And what should I say? That he knows my secret?" Samantha smiled bitterly. "What crime is there in mentioning Detroit?" While they were talking, Samantha's phone beeped with a new message. An unknown number. "Look out the window, Sammy." Samantha went to the living room window and pulled back the curtain. Daniel was standing on the sidewalk across the street, looking straight at her window. He raised his phone and waved it, as if to say he was waiting for an answer. "He's here," Samantha whispered into the phone. Right on the street. Don't go outside, Rachel said firmly. I'm coming to you, and call the police immediately. Daniel continued to stand on the sidewalk, his eyes fixed on Samantha's window. She stepped back into the room and dialed 911. Emergency services, what's the problem? My ex-husband is stalking me, Samantha tried to speak clearly. He's standing outside my house and sending threatening messages. Is he physically threatening you? Does he have a weapon? I don't know. He's demanding money and threatening to reveal information about me. There was a pause on the line. Ma'am, if he's not physically threatening you and isn't violating any laws by being in a public place, all we can do is send a patrol car to check on the situation. When Samantha looked out the window again, Daniel was gone. 20 minutes later, a police car arrived, but the officers just shrugged. They found no violations of the law. Rachel arrived almost at the same time as the police. Seeing her friend's condition, she insisted that Samantha pack her things for a few days and move in with her. I can't hide forever, Samantha objected. Not forever, but right now you need a safe place. Rachel began packing Samantha's clothes into a small travel bag. Besides, I need to tell you something about Daniel. In Rachel's cozy two-bedroom apartment overlooking the park, Samantha was finally able to relax a little. She called Michael and explained the situation without going into details. He offered his help, including the possibility of staying with him, but Samantha refused, not wanting to complicate their relationship. What did you want to tell me? Samantha asked as they sat down at the kitchen table with cups of tea. Rachel took out her tablet. After our conversation with Daniel, I decided to check his past. I used my connections in social services, she said, opening a folder of documents. Did you know he had another wife before you? Samantha shook her head in shock. He never mentioned it. Because he had something to hide, Rachel said, showing her a scan of a police report. Carol Higgins, his first wife, filed 2 domestic violence reports against him. Then she suddenly withdrew them and disappeared from Flint. No one knows where she is now. Samantha gasped. Was that before we met? 3 years ago. I found her friend, Mary Thompson. She said Daniel was pathologically jealous, controlled Carol's every move, and isolated her from friends and family. That's not the Daniel I knew, Samantha said quietly, although deep down she recognized familiar patterns of behavior. People with such tendencies know how to charm and pretend, Rachel said softly. And then, gradually, they show their true colors. Samantha remembered how Daniel had initially shown concern by asking where she had been and who she had been talking to. How her social circle gradually narrowed to his colleagues and their wives. How he joked that her attractiveness was a problem when they were in public. There's something else, Rachel continued, scrolling through the documents on her tablet. Police reports of his arrests over the past year, twice for petty theft, once for fighting. He's becoming more and more unpredictable, Sam. At that moment, Samantha's phone rang. An unknown number. Don't answer it, Rachel warned, but it was too late. Hello? Samantha said cautiously. You think I won't find you at your friend's house? Daniel laughed hoarsely. I need the money, Sammy. Time is running out. I don't have that kind of money, Daniel, she said firmly. Leave me alone, or I'll get a restraining order. Really? His tone became threatening. Maybe your school principal would be interested to know that their model teacher was covering up incidents of abuse, that you lied to the police. Can you imagine what the parents who trust you with their children will think? This is blackmail. Samantha felt anger rising inside her, replacing her fear. This is business, Daniel replied coldly. You have 3 days. When the call ended, Rachel took Samantha's phone and turned on the call recording. Now we have proof of blackmail. That should be enough for a restraining order. On Monday morning, Samantha struggled to concentrate on her work. Rachel insisted that she take the day off, but Samantha refused, not wanting to disrupt the children's routine. During her lunch break, she received another message, a photo of her class during morning lessons, taken through the school window. There was no text, just a simple reminder that Daniel was watching. After school, as she was leaving the school, Samantha froze. Michael and Daniel were standing at the gate, clearly in the middle of a tense conversation. "Stay away from her," she heard Michael's voice as she approached. "I know about your threats." Daniel smirked, his eyes shining feverishly. "And what do you know about your perfect teacher?" He noticed Samantha approaching and raised his voice. "Ask her about Detroit, about how she lied to the police." Michael grabbed Daniel by the lapels of his jacket. "Get out of here or I swear." "Swear what?" Daniel wriggled out of his grip, his face contorted with rage. "You don't know anything about me. You don't know anything about us. She belongs to me." "Daniel, stop it!" Samantha stepped between them, feeling the eyes of the other teachers and parents on them. "Leave now, or I'll call the police." Daniel gave them a hateful look. "I'm not done yet, Sammy. This is just the beginning." When he left, Samantha turned to Michael. "How did you know he'd be here?" "I didn't," Michael admitted. "I came to invite you to dinner and saw him at the gate. He asked where you were, I refused to answer, and he started saying horrible things about your past." Samantha felt her face burning with shame. "I need to explain something to you." They went to the nearest cafe, where Samantha told Michael the whole truth about the abuse in their marriage, about Detroit, about why she had kept it a secret. Michael listened silently, his face impassive. When she finished, he took her hands in his. "None of this changes how I feel about you, Samantha. You are a victim, not guilty." "I should have left earlier." She shook her head. "I should have asked for help." "It's incredibly difficult to get out of an abusive relationship," Michael said gently. "You did it, and that's what matters." That evening, at Rachel's apartment, they discussed what to do next. Now they had the blackmail recording and witnesses to the conflict at the school, enough to get a restraining order. Samantha stared out the window for a long time, watching the evening lights of Flint come on. "I think I need to get away for a while. Disappear. My parents have a cottage on Lake Huron," Samantha replied. "It's 2 hours from here. They hardly ever use it since they moved to Florida." "What about work?" Rachel asked. "I'll take a week off, say I have family circumstances. During that time, we'll get a restraining order, and maybe Daniel will calm down when he can't find me." Rachel looked unconvinced. Late that evening, Samantha called Michael and told him about her plan. He offered to go with her, but she refused. "I need to be alone, to gather my thoughts, and I don't want to drag you deeper into this situation." "I'm already involved," Michael replied gently, "and I'm worried about you." "I'll be fine," Samantha repeated the phrase that had become her mantra. "I'll be in touch." That night, Samantha couldn't sleep. She lay on the couch in Rachel's living room, remembering every moment of her marriage to Daniel, trying to figure out when it all went wrong. Maybe Rachel was right, and he had always been like this. He just hid it well. In the morning, she submitted a request for a week's leave for family reasons, packed the necessary things, and loaded them into her car. Rachel insisted on seeing her off at least part of the way. "Be careful," her friend said goodbye, hugging Samantha tightly. "And call me every day, morning and evening." "I promise," Samantha nodded. "Everything will be fine." The drive to the lake took almost 3 hours due to road repairs. Her parents' cottage stood on a small cape surrounded by pine trees, overlooking the endless expanse of Lake Huron. It was deserted in the fall. Most vacationers came during the summer months. Samantha opened the door to the cottage and breathed in the familiar smell of wood and old books. Nothing had changed here in years. The same faded photographs on the walls, the same old furniture. This place had always seemed like a refuge from the hustle and bustle of the world to her. Before going to bed, she called Rachel to let her know she had arrived safely and sent a short message to Michael. Then she turned off her phone to save battery power. There were few outlets in the cottage, and the generator was intermittent. During the night, Samantha was awakened by a strange sound. She sat up in bed, listening to the darkness. Perhaps it was the wind or a forest animal. The cottage creaked at the slightest breeze. Suddenly, there was a distinct knock at the door. Rachel Clark dialed Samantha's number for the third time. The voice on the phone said, "The subscriber is unavailable." Samantha hadn't answered her calls for 3 days, even though she had promised to call every evening. "Something must have happened," Rachel muttered, pacing around her living room. She would never forget to call. The next day, unable to bear the anxiety, Rachel took time off work and drove to the cottage on Lake Huron. The trip took almost 3 hours. When she finally pulled up to the small wooden building surrounded by pine trees, her heart sank. Samantha's car was parked in the driveway. The front door of the cottage was ajar and swaying slightly in the wind. "Samantha!" Rachel called as she entered. "Are you here?" Everything inside looked untouched. A mug of half-drunk tea on the table, a book open in the middle, a blanket carelessly thrown on the sofa. But Samantha was nowhere to be found. In the bedroom, the bed was rumpled, as if someone had jumped out of it in a hurry. Samantha's phone and bag were gone. Rachel walked around the area surrounding the cottage, calling her friend's name. The silence, broken only by the rustling of the wind in the pine trees and the lapping of the waves on the lake, was her only response. On the back porch, she noticed something strange. The rock under which she knew the spare key was kept had been moved. She went down the path to the lake, where she found signs of a struggle: trampled grass, broken branches. There was a dark stain on a rock at the water's edge. Rachel leaned closer and realized with horror that it was dried blood. With trembling hands, she dialed 911. 3 days later, early in the morning, 2 fishermen discovered a woman's body washed up on the banks of the Flint River, not far from the bridge on Jennings Road. The body had been in the water for several days, but was still identifiable. A woman in her mid-30s with brown hair, dressed in a nightgown and jacket. Detective Alex Morgan arrived on the scene 20 minutes after the call. A tall, 45-year-old man with piercing gray eyes and closely cropped graying hair. He had been with the Flint Police Department's Homicide Division for 15 years and was considered one of the best investigators in the county. "What do we have?" he asked, approaching the medical examiner. "A woman, approximately 35 to 40 years old," replied Dr. Reeves, an elderly man with a neatly trimmed beard. "The cause of death is head trauma combined with asphyxia. Time of death is approximately 3 to 4 days ago." "Asphyxiation?" Morgan frowned. "Strangulation?" "Exactly," Reeves nodded. "See these bruises on her neck? Characteristic finger marks. There are also signs of head trauma, a strong blow with a blunt object. Interestingly, the head injury was not fatal in itself. It could have stunned the victim, but not killed her." "So someone hit her on the head and then strangled her?" Morgan clarified. "It looks that way. And one more detail. There are signs of binding on her wrists. Her hands were tied with something like rope or cord." Morgan examined the place where the body was found. The river made a gentle bend here, forming a small backwater where the body could have gotten stuck after being carried there by the current. Back at the station, the detective found a folder on his desk. "What's this?" he asked his partner, Detective Lisa Chen, a young woman of Chinese descent with a sharp mind and a photographic memory. "A possible match," she replied. "Samantha Prescott, 35 years old, a Washington elementary school teacher. The missing person report was filed 2 days ago by her friend, Rachel Clark." Morgan opened the folder. A photograph of a woman with brown hair and green eyes. Definitely similar to the body found. "What else do we know?" "She went to her parents' cottage on Lake Huron 4 days ago to escape harassment from her ex-husband. She was supposed to call her friend every day, but after the first night, she didn't get in touch. Her friend went to check on her and found the cottage empty with signs of a possible struggle." "Ex-husband?" Morgan raised an eyebrow. "Stalking?" "Daniel Prescott, 38 years old, former engineer, now homeless. According to her friend, he demanded money from his wife and threatened her. Samantha filed a stalking complaint with the police a few days before she disappeared." Contact Rachel Clark, Morgan said, closing the folder. I need to talk to her as soon as possible and find this Daniel Prescott. An hour later, Rachel Clark was sitting in Morgan's office, pale and exhausted from insomnia. We found a body that may be Samantha Prescott, Morgan began cautiously. I need you to help with the identification. At the morgue, Rachel confirmed that it was indeed Samantha. When she left the building, she burst into tears, and Morgan had to support her. Tell me everything you know about Samantha's last days, he asked as they sat in his car in front of the morgue. Through her tears, Rachel told him about Daniel's stalking of Samantha, the blackmail, the threats. He demanded money and threatened to tell about the Detroit incident. Rachel wiped her tears. Samantha left to hide from him, but God, I should have insisted she stay with me. The incident in Detroit? Morgan repeated. Daniel beat her there a few years ago. She hid it from the police and said she had fallen. Did Samantha have a relationship with anyone else? The detective asked. She recently started dating Michael Lorenzo, the owner of an Italian restaurant. He knew about her problems with her ex-husband. Daniel and Michael even had an argument near the school the day before she left. Who else knew where Samantha was going? Only Michael and I, Rachel replied, but then hesitated. After thanking Rachel, Morgan sent her home with an officer and set out to find Daniel Prescott. Finding a homeless person in Flint was no easy task, but by evening the patrol officers found him at the Good Heart shelter on the outskirts of town. He looked broken, dirty clothes, stubble, red eyes. During the interrogation, Daniel sat hunched over, staring at a single point. Mr. Prescott, Morgan began, we are aware of your conflict with Samantha Prescott. You stalked her, demanded money, threatened her. Daniel looked up at him with a dull gaze. I loved her. I would never have hurt her. However, you beat her up in Detroit, Morgan countered. It was an accident, Daniel said, lowering his head. I was drunk. I couldn't control myself. Where were you on Sunday night and Monday morning? Daniel was silent for so long that Morgan was about to repeat the question. I was sleeping in an abandoned building on Greenwood Avenue, he finally replied. There are a few other homeless people there. They can confirm it. Did you know Samantha had gone to Lake Huron? No, Daniel shook his head. I was looking for her in the city. I thought she was hiding at a friend's house. Interesting, Morgan leaned forward. Your fingerprints were found at the lake house, on the door and window. Daniel visibly paled. That's impossible. I wasn't there. Mr. Prescott, you are under arrest on suspicion of the murder of Samantha Prescott, Morgan said, standing up. You have the right to remain silent. I didn't kill her, Daniel shouted, jumping up. I swear, I loved her. The officers led him out of the interrogation room. Morgan remained alone, thoughtfully looking at the interrogation notes. Daniel was clearly lying about his whereabouts on the night of Samantha's disappearance. But there was something strange about his reaction, genuine surprise at the mention of fingerprints. The next morning, Detective Morgan met with Michael Lorenzo at his restaurant. Lorenzo seemed shocked by the news of Samantha's death. I can't believe it, he repeated, sitting at a table in the empty dining room. We had just started dating. Mr. Lorenzo, where were you on Sunday night? Morgan asked. Here, at the restaurant, Michael replied. We had a special event for regular customers that ended after midnight. Then I helped the staff with the cleanup. Can anyone confirm your presence? All my staff, about 10 people, Michael frowned. You don't think I'm involved, do you? We're checking everyone who was close to the victim, Morgan replied evenly. Did you know Samantha had gone to Lake Huron? Yes, she told me, Michael nodded. But she didn't give me the exact address, just my parents' lake house. Did you tell anyone that Samantha was going away? Michael thought for a moment. No, only my sous chef, Tony. He asked why I'd been so gloomy lately. How did Tony react to the news? Not particularly. He just listened. Morgan made a note in his notebook. What do you know about Daniel Prescott? Only what Samantha told me. Michael's face darkened. That he was abusive, stalked her, demanded money. We ran into each other once near the school. He was acting crazy, threatening to tell me some of Samantha's secrets. About Detroit? Morgan asked. Yes, he mentioned Detroit. Michael nodded. Samantha later told me what happened there. After talking to Michael, Morgan returned to the station, where Detective Chen was already gathering information about Samantha Prescott. Her colleagues describe her as a responsible and beloved teacher, she reported. The school principal is in shock over what happened. No problems at work, excellent reviews from parents. What about her finances? A modest teacher's salary, most of which went to pay the mortgage. No large sums in her accounts. Chen turned the page in her notebook. There's something else. I checked Daniel Prescott's past. He had a first wife, Carol Higgins. She filed 2 reports of domestic violence, then withdrew them and disappeared. Disappeared? Morgan raised an eyebrow. She moved out of Flint without leaving a forwarding address. Rachel Clark mentioned it. Find her, Morgan ordered. She might be able to tell us something important about Daniel. Toward evening, the results of the investigation of the lake house came in. Investigators found Daniel's fingerprints on the door handle and window frame, contradicting his claim that he had not been there. In the woods, on the path to the lake, they found traces of blood on a rock and a piece of fabric from a nightgown. But the most disturbing find was a rope hidden in the bushes near the cabin. It had traces of blood matching Samantha's blood type and fibers from her nightgown. Forensic analysis showed that the knots on the rope matched the marks on the victim's wrists. This was a planned murder, Morgan said, studying the reports. Someone came prepared with a rope. They hit Samantha on the head, strangled her, tied her up, and transported the body dozens of miles to dump it in the Flint River. But why? Chen asked. Why not leave the body at the scene of the crime? To buy time, Morgan said thoughtfully, or to point in the wrong direction. The medical examiner provided additional details. The head injury was caused by a blunt object, possibly a rock. The strangulation occurred approximately 20 to 30 minutes after the blow to the head. This indicated that the killer had waited, perhaps to make sure the victim was still alive after the first blow. This is personal, Morgan said. The killer wanted to see her face at the moment of death. That evening, divers found Samantha's bag with her documents and phone in the river. Technicians immediately began working to recover data from the water-damaged device. Daniel Prescott remained the prime suspect. However, Morgan was in no hurry to jump to conclusions. Daniel seemed genuinely unaware of his fingerprints in the cabin. Besides, moving the body would have required a car, which Daniel, a homeless man, did not have. Michael Lorenzo had a solid alibi for the night of the murder, confirmed by numerous witnesses. But his sous chef, Tony, knew about Samantha's departure. Could this information have been passed on somehow? Other questions remained. Who else knew Samantha's whereabouts? Who could have had a motive for killing her? And how did the killer know about the spare key under the rock? The investigation was just beginning, but Morgan already sensed that this case would prove to be much more complicated than it seemed at first glance. 5 days had passed since Samantha Prescott's body was found. Detective Alex Morgan sat in his office, surrounded by photographs, reports, and diagrams. The night dragged on, but sleep eluded him. Something important was slipping his attention. The phone rang, breaking the silence. "Morgan," the detective answered wearily. "It's Chen. We found Carol Higgins." His partner's voice sounded excited. Or rather, what's left of her. Morgan instantly sat up straight in his chair. "What do you mean?" "The remains of a woman found by builders in the foundation of an abandoned house on Oakley Street 3 years ago. The DNA matched samples taken from Higgins's apartment. The case was listed as unsolved, but now, I'm on my way," Morgan said, already pulling on his jacket. "Gather all the information on that case." An hour later, in the dimly lit conference room of the precinct, Morgan and Chen were reviewing the old case files. "Cause of death, asphyxiation," Chen read. The marks on the cervical vertebrae are consistent with strangulation by hands. The body was buried in the basement of an abandoned house at 17 Oakley Street. The house had previously belonged to Daniel Prescott's parents. Did he inherit it? Morgan asked. Yes, after his parents died, 6 months before Carol disappeared. Chen turned the page. But here's the interesting part. Daniel sold the house a month after his wife disappeared. The new owners planned to tear it down and build a new one, but they went bankrupt. The house stood abandoned for another 2 years until a new construction project began. Morgan looked at the photo of the house, an old 2-story building with a basement. 2 murders, same modus operandi, he said thoughtfully. Blow, then strangulation, and both victims were his wives. But why transport Samantha's body? Chen asked. He buried Carol in the basement of his own house. Because he no longer has a home, Morgan replied. He's homeless. He had nowhere to hide the body except to dispose of it in the river. The next morning, technicians recovered data from Samantha's phone. The last message was a text from an unknown number. Come to the lake. I know everything about Detroit. If you don't want everyone to find out the truth, come alone. That's not like Daniel, Morgan frowned. Too sophisticated for him. We checked the number, Chen reported. It's a prepaid phone, purchased with cash at a store on the outskirts of Flint. Surveillance cameras captured the buyer, a man wearing a hoodie. Morgan turned to the board with the photos. Let's assume Daniel found out where Samantha was. He lured her to the cabin with a text message, then got inside using a spare key he knew about from previous visits. But he doesn't have a car, Chen objected. How did he get to the lake? How did he transport the body? Good question. Morgan rubbed his chin. Check all the taxis, buses, car rentals. Someone must have given him a ride. By evening, the results came in. A taxi driver identified Daniel from a photo. He had driven him to a gas station 5 kilometers from the lake house on that Sunday evening. Technicians who examined the rope found at the crime scene discovered not only traces of Samantha's blood, but also fibers matching the jacket Daniel was wearing. Morgan called in a psychologist to build a profile of the killer. We are dealing with a man who kills his partners when he feels he is losing control over them, explained Dr. Phillips, an experienced criminal psychologist. His first wife tried to leave him and filed reports of abuse. His second wife divorced him and started a new life. In both cases, the victims betrayed him in his view. But there were 3 years between the murders, Morgan pointed out. He was hibernating, the psychologist explained. Many serial killers go through periods of inactivity. Samantha and her new partner became a trigger, a reminder of his failure with his first wife. Morgan went to the prison block to reinterrogate Daniel Prescott. He was sitting on a narrow cot, his head in his hands. Mr. Prescott, we found Carol Higgins, Morgan said, sitting down opposite him. Or rather, her remains, in the basement of your former home. Daniel slowly raised his head. I don't understand what you're talking about. You do, Morgan said, laying out the photos in front of him. 2 women, 2 similar murders, blunt force trauma, strangulation, concealment of the body. Your fingerprints in Samantha's cabin, your DNA on the rope used to bind her body. I didn't kill her, Daniel said quietly, but his voice trembled. You lured Samantha into a trap by pretending to be a blackmailer, Morgan continued. You knew she would try to hide in the cabin on the lake. You remembered the spare key. You hit her on the head, strangled her, then transported the body to the city to dump it in the river. No! Daniel cried out. We have a statement from the taxi driver who took you to the lake. Morgan leaned forward. And evidence from the crime scene. The only question is, how did you transport the body? Daniel's face contorted. I loved her. I just wanted to talk, to explain. Like with Carol? Morgan asked harshly. Just talk? It was an accident, Daniel whispered, but without conviction. 2 accidents? With the same method of murder? Morgan shook his head. You killed them both because you couldn't accept losing control over them. Something inside Daniel broke. His shoulders slumped, his gaze dimmed. She was mine, he whispered. Mine. And this restaurateur thought he could just come and take her away. How did you transport the body? Morgan repeated the question. Daniel was silent for a long time, then slowly raised his eyes. In the trunk of her own car. The keys were in the cottage. Investigators immediately examined Samantha's car, which was parked in the police station parking lot. Despite thorough cleaning, microscopic traces of blood matching Samantha's blood type were found in the trunk. Daniel Prescott confessed to the murders of Samantha Prescott and Carol Higgins and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. At Samantha's funeral, Rachel met Michael. They stood in the drizzling rain, watching the coffin being lowered into the grave. I keep thinking, Rachel said quietly. Could we have done anything to prevent this? We can't blame ourselves, Michael replied. People like Daniel are masters at hiding their true nature. Samantha is not the first and, unfortunately, not the last victim of domestic violence. Detective Morgan watched the ceremony from a distance. Another case closed, another family tragedy solved. But the heaviness remained. Samantha had tried to start a new life, to break out of the vicious cycle of violence. She had almost succeeded. The river keeps its secrets, but sooner or later it brings them to the surface, Morgan thought, as he turned away and headed for his car. His phone was already vibrating in his pocket. A new case demanded his attention.